back then, New England had, Bill Parcells was the coach, and he was disciplinarian. You show up on time for meetings. 5 minutes early is considered on time. It's just second nature to me from being brought up in such a, and gone to school at such a disciplined school, disciplined program. Whenever I got drafted by New England, people say, "Oh, Parcells, he's a hard coach." And, of course I was scared coming in as a rookie, for his system was just like a seamless transition. Whereas a lot of players, whether they come from other NFL teams or they come from places like Florida State or Notre Dame or Miami or wherever all those programs are, a lot of times people have a hard time adjusting right off the bat to all his rules. For me, it was just kind of second nature. Speed of the game, I think, is what the adjustment is. And, going from college to pro, that was what I really think was the big adjustment, was just the speed of the game and how fast it was. And then, the other aspect is just your stamina. You're coming from a college program. And Brittany, I know you probably didn't ask this question, but sometimes people like to hear this anyway. Like, what's the difference between college and pro? And in college, you just had probably 2 or 3 weeks of two-a-days, and you were playing your first game. So I still remember my rookie year, and we were in training camp, and I think our special teams coach, this guy, Coach Sweatman, it was the day, I think, that like colleges were, I think it was like the 3-week point. And he goes, "Hey, Max," he goes, "just think about it. Last year, after 3 weeks, you were playing football games." He goes, "You got 5 weeks left of camp."
Oh gosh.
I was like, "Gee, thanks, coach." That was the part that you really couldn't be prepared for. You just had to suck it up and get through it. Is that you hit a wall at some point during your training camp, rookie year. That's what the hard part was, because you'd hit a wall where you were like, "Oh man, I got how much longer?"
It sounds like the two big things that we could take away from the difference between college and pro ball are, as you just mentioned, the speed of the game, and it looks like your stamina obviously has to be a lot better when you go in when you're going into the pros. And it also sounds like you being heavily involved with the boot camp and everything that the Navy prepared you for got you ready to be playing with the Patriots. So I want to talk a little bit about pro football. I have some of your stats pulled up. So for you guys that don't know, Max was drafted by the New England Patriots in the 6th round, selected number 168 in the 1994 draft. He actually played 7 seasons with the Patriots from 1994 to the year 2000. He played in 14 games as a rookie. I know we just spoke a little bit about his rookie year. And he saw some action on special teams. In 1996, you started every game for the Patriots at right offensive tackle.
And 95 too.
And 95. Sorry, these are based off of the notes that I have that I pulled offline. So in 1995, it sounds like in 1996, you started every game for the Patriots at right offensive tackle, including playoff games. And in 1998, you played in all 16 games and started 11. So what was it like playing for the New England Patriots? Again, you already kind of spoke about playing under Coach Bill Parcells. And of course, at some point, we need to hear about Drew Bledsoe, because I grew up watching Tom Brady. I know a little bit about Drew Bledsoe, of course, who doesn't? But let's hear about Bill Parcells, you playing for the Patriots in the 90s, and a little bit about Drew Bledsoe.
Well, let me tell you, Brittany, the teams that you grew up watching with Brady and all, seeing the Super Bowls and all that, that never would have happened if it wasn't for our teams in the 90s. Mr. Kraft bought the team in 1994, so I always say him and I were rookies together. And then, Parcells was hired in 93, and then was 93, 94, 95, and 96. So he was there for 4 seasons. So I had Parcells for 3 years. Bledsoe came in 93. So him and Parcells came to New England at the same time. And, the foundation of what all the success that this region just experienced for the past 20 years was set up by those teams in the 90s. So the foundation of all those teams, or whatever, because like Coach Belichick coached under Parcells, Coach Belichick coached in New England in '96. He was an assistant coach in '96 when we went to the Super Bowl, lost against Green Bay. A lot of those coaches that won those first couple Super Bowls with Belichick as the head coach, like Charlie Weiss, Romeo Crennel, and some other assistants were part of that coaching staff in the '90s that we were on. Not to mention a lot of the players that, like Ty Law, Willie McGinnis, Lawyer Malloy, Troy Brown, Kevin Falk, Teddy Bruschi, Ted Johnson. A lot of those players that were in those first 3 Super Bowl wins all came from those teams in the '90s. When we started playing, in '94, my rookie year, we went 10-6. We went to the playoffs, lost in the first round, ironically against Belichick coaching the Cleveland Browns. Parcells really changed the culture in New England. His success from winning Super Bowls with the Giants, and he brought a couple of those veterans with him to the team to kind of instill his culture on and influence on New England. The one thing he was really good at was using veterans to get across his message in the locker room. 91 and 92, and those teams, there's 1-15. I mean, there were some bad teams in New England. The team had gone to the Super Bowl back in '86 and lost to the Bears, but then the team had kind of just fallen off the face of the earth after that. When Parcells came, Mr. Kraft bought the team. That revived the whole organization, the whole franchise. We had a good mix of, you had older veterans, and then we had this group of young single guys that were playing, and we were all playing together, and we were having fun together as young 20-somethings, early 20s, mid-20s. And so we spent a lot of time together and became good friends. I remember thinking that coming from college, people always said, "Oh, pro football, it's just a business. That you don't have any fun, you don't really make any good friends." But I thought it was exactly opposite. I mean, I thought, whenever I came, I think I was just fortunate to come here, and also at the time that I did, we went out together. You didn't have, like I said before, you didn't have social media, you didn't have cell phones. You kind of had cell phones, but they didn't have any cameras on them. So you could still go out in town and go have, pretty good time without having to worry about, somebody snapping a picture of you here, snapping a picture of you there. And so, we had a really good time together. Not that we were causing, too much trouble, but, whatever, we're 20. But that, that camaraderie that you build off the field, really that helps you when you get on the field and everything. But it hadn't gone to the point of where, with social media, everybody's trying to build their brand now. And it's just become more of a me generation, it seems like, with players. Whereas back then it was a lot more team focused, and it was just really fun to be a part of a team back then.
I actually really enjoyed hearing you talk about the '90s versus the current, and how back in the day it was more team focused and not just me, and selfie here and photos there. I totally get it. But I also did like that you pointed out the fact that you as a team gelled together, and that actually helped you guys on the field as well. So when you guys were out, whether you be golfing or at the bar after a game, it helped you guys come together.
Earlier, I was telling you about one of my best friends playing at New England was our backup quarterback, Scott Zolak. And, I would probably consider him, one of my top 2 or 3 best friends from whenever I played football here. It'd be during the game, and, it'd be in the fourth quarter, and we were winning, and he would be like, he goes, "Wayne, where are we going after the game?" It would just be like, because he didn't really have to worry because he wasn't playing, so he wasn't worried about, what he was going back out on the field. But he goes, "Where are we going after the game?" So, people always wonder, what are people saying to each other down there on the sidelines? I don't know what they say nowadays, but I know back then, we were.
You guys were planning the night out.
Oh, if we had the game in hand. Yeah, we were talking about, hey, it's 7 o'clock. We're going to meet down at Daisy Buchanan's. I know my family's in town. I'm going to stay in tonight, but I'll see you at Daisy's on Monday night, because that was the big night. Monday nights were the big night down at Daisy's back in those days. like that.
I love that you just shared that when you guys, especially when you were winning, of course, you probably, when you were losing, weren't sitting there talking about stuff outside of the game. But I love that when you guys were crushing a game, you're like, hey, let's go out after this game, get some drinks, go out and have a good time. I think that's super cool. I want to hear you talk a little bit more before we get into some fun facts about you. A little bit more maybe about your friends. I know you mentioned Scott Zolak, who actually is a radio personality now on 98.5 The Sports Hub. Talk a little bit about him. And also, I'd love to hear you discuss a little bit about Drew Bledsoe, because obviously he was the top quarterback back in the day.
I'll start out with Zoe. You know, like I said, Zoe was kind of like, he was really, you know, he's a backup quarterback, but if there was anybody, I mean, he was ready to play at all times. I mean, that guy was a consummate professional. Now, he was also a jokester. I think you got to have that. I think you got to have that on a team just to keep people light sometimes, and you know, just to have fun. And the one thing Zoe's really talented at is that he can draw. He can draw anybody. He can draw caricatures, and he could look at you, Brittany. I'm telling you right now, he could look at, and still today, he could look at you, look at a picture of you, and he could draw a caricature of you in 10 minutes. In a good version, he could also do it in a version that's kind of an embarrassing version also, which is or the ones that he would normally do. He would always draw me, obviously, because I'm from a small town in Missouri. He would always draw me with overalls on, and then he would give me like this big belly, and for some reason he always put a tattoo on my arm that said "Mom" on it. I have no idea why. And then my hands, I don't know if people can see my hands on here. You see that finger?
I can see it. I can see it.
Do you see this finger? Oh, okay. Can they see my finger? Can they see my hands?
Yeah, everybody can see it. So I'll describe it, because when it comes to the podcast, so right now Max is actually holding up both of his hands, and it looks like one of them, is it bent a little bit more than the other? Yeah. You're like moving it around?
Yeah, this finger right here is kind of bent. And so he would always draw my hand with that finger being bent like that. So that was another. And actually, I had a little bit of a beard back when I played too. So he'd pick out certain features that were, you know, unique to you. And he would always make sure they were in the drawings. And then you come to work in the morning, and you know, I walk in the offensive line meeting room, and there would be like a caricature of me. And so when he had like a break or whatever, he would just go draw pictures of people in their respective meeting rooms, and you'd show up, and you know, some of them may be a little you know, X-rated, let me say, you know, that you'd walk into, you'd be like, oh, Zolak, what the? He married into a great local family up here, and they've all kind of taken me in as like, you know, like an extra brother. So if ever I have Christmas and I don't, you know, my kids are with, you know, I'm divorced. So over the years with my kids were with their mom, and I kind of didn't have anywhere to go, they would always be like, you know, Max, come to our house. So it's like I don't even have to ask. It's like I just show up.
Hopefully you at least brought like a pie or something to the mail.
Oh, I brought personality, Brittany. That's all I got to bring.
So I love that you just talked about your good friend, Scott Zolak. Obviously, you guys played together for a number of years. And again, now he is a radio personality on 98.5 Sports Hub in the Boston area. And did you enjoy playing under Drew Bledsoe? Talk to us a little bit about Drew for a bit. And then I want to lightly discuss the Super Bowl that you were involved in against the Packers, because we're going to actually be airing this episode during Super Bowl week this year.
Drew is a great teammate, a great quarterback, a great, you know, field general to have in the huddle. You know, I think the one thing that people back then, you know, he wasn't comfortable with the limelight, not like Brady. I don't know. I just don't think he was comfortable with the attention. You know, he was from the West Coast, you know, from what, you know, kind of like a small town himself up in Washington, and I think he just wasn't comfortable with, you know, everything that comes with playing, you know, in a city like Boston. But as far as on the field, you know, I mean, that guy was a gunslinger. I mean, he had a cannon, and he was big. I think he was tall, so he looked. I think people, when he wear, you know, he looked kind of skinny, but he wasn't. I mean, he was, you know, 6'5", maybe 240, 235. I mean, he was a big man. And, you know, the thing was, is he, along with that size, he was as tough as they come. I mean, you know, he would get hit, and the hits just didn't bother him. They didn't bother him like they bother some quarterback. I just remember, you know, blocking for him. The big thing with him was, and I got him clobbered sometimes. I mean, I got him absolutely mangled. And, you know, I would go like try to help him up off the ground. And, you know, I'd be like, man, I'm so sorry. Sorry, man. And he was like, nobody was open anyway. But there'd be other times where, you know, I block my guy, you know, so, and he might, you know, either hurry Drew or get a little bit of pressure, but not hit him. And Drew would get so upset because he'd be like, come on, Max, hold him out, because I had a guy wide open. So he was more concerned with the result of the play and what was going on downfield than he was about himself, you know, getting hit. It was more about the result of the play and the impact that my performance had on the play more than it was about him getting hit. And that's what I always kind of respected about him. He never yelled about getting hit and complained about getting hit. It was more about, you know, the success of the play. And that's what I always tell people about him, and why I always respected him as a player.
And going back to earlier, you were speaking about how it sounded like the New England Patriots of the early 90s into the 2000s kind of paved the way for the generation of the Patriots that I'm currently watching now and that I grew up watching when I was in middle school. It's a dynasty. It's kind of like you guys started forming that gel with Bob Kraft, with Bill Parcells, with Drew Bledsoe, yourself. Like, you guys were a part of who we are today. And obviously now we're in more of a rebuilding phase. I get that, with Brady leaving, with people getting older and phasing out. But for 20 years, I literally sat and watched our team, the Patriots, dominate. So I love hearing how you guys kind of paved the way slowly for that dynasty.
Yeah, I think that mindset, you know, the Patriot way or whatever they call it, I think that mindset was born, you know, with Parcells and was instilled in the players on that team. You know, of course, we had Parcells for, you know, for 93 to 96. And then 97, 98, 99, we had Pete Carroll. Had pretty good success himself out in Seattle, and before that at USC as a college coach, winning national championships and then winning Super Bowls and up in Seattle. I think that the situation was just different here with him following a guy like Parcells. You know, he didn't really have that control that he does now out in Seattle, and I think that, you know, that time frame, you know, we kind of started to dip a little bit, but I think that attitude that we had built, that attitude that we had with Parcells, survived those 3 years, bridged the gap to whatever Bell, you know, Kraft kind of, Mr. Kraft said, okay, he let Pete go, and he realized that he needed to have somebody in here that was going to be in power with on the field and off the field. When he brought Belichick back, you know, Belichick demanded having the power to, you know, hire and fire guys. Expectation to win every game that we went out there to play, even though we didn't win every game, but we expected to win every game, and we were not happy, you know, when that didn't happen.
The New England Patriot way and do your job. I don't know if that was the whole mentality back in the day, but that obviously is the mentality now. Let's discuss a little bit about their Super Bowl. So obviously I'm going to be dropping this episode during Super Bowl week this upcoming year. So you were actually involved in a Super Bowl against the Green Bay Packers. I believe the final score, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I found offline. Final score was 35-21.
Yep.
What was it like playing in a Super Bowl and going for that Lombardi trophy?
Awesome experience. You know, that year coming out, you know, the regular season, we won the AFC East. We clinched the division in the last game of the regular season. We were playing down in New York and playing the Giants, and we were down at halftime. I think we were down 21 to nothing. It was something. We were down by 20 points, and we came back and won that game. And that clinched the AFC East. It also clinched the first round bye. Back then, you know, this year was the first year of having 7 teams in the playoffs in each conference. Top 2 teams in each conference got a first round bye. So we got the 2nd seed. The Broncos had the 1st seed. So we were off that next week. so we could watch Wild Card Weekend. It was great. It was a great time because it actually is the best of both worlds because we got a couple days off that weekend to go back home for Christmas, but then we knew we were coming back to play playoff football. It was a special year, and then we played Pittsburgh in the divisional round. Jacksonville was playing Denver, and Jacksonville beat Denver on the Saturday of that divisional round weekend. And when we saw that, because we had lost to Denver during the regular season, so when we saw that Jacksonville beat Denver, we were so excited when we were showing up at the team hotel the night before the game because we were like, man, because of course we're like, man, all we got to do is beat Pittsburgh. You know, we're going to beat Jacksonville. But we were just all excited, like, man, we just got to take care of business tomorrow, and we'll have the AFC Championship at home. I mean, I think it was just we were so relieved that we weren't going to have to go out to Denver and play Denver. We beat Pittsburgh, beat them 28-3. It was unbelievable, just a great game altogether. And then the next weekend, Jacksonville came to town. It was the first time they'd ever had the first AFC Championship in New England. And we beat Jacksonville. We didn't play well. Our defense played well. Our special teams played well. Our offense did not play well, did not move the ball well, but we won. We were on our way to New Orleans for the Super Bowl. So we were down there all week, practicing at Tulane's practice facilities, riding in buses, getting police escorts everywhere. That whole experience was very special. You know, all the while preparing for, you know, playing against one of the best teams in NFL history. I really believe that Green Bay was, with Brett Favre. We're just a stacked team back then with Antonio Freeman and Dorsey Levens as a running back. And on defense, their defense was just, I mean, they had Reggie White, you know, kind of known to be the best defensive lineman in NFL history. And that's who I had to play against directly in that game. Rough game for me. I gave up a couple sacks in that game to Reggie. It was a little bit of a hard pill to swallow after that game because I felt that kind of had at least more than my share of responsibility for the outcome. But you know, over the years, you know, you kind of like are able to kind of look at it, you know, more objectively, I guess, and deal with it better.
It obviously sounds like a fond memory of yours. Being able to even go to a Super Bowl, I think, is an incredible feat. So congratulations to you. It sounds like you've absolutely crushed it while you played, obviously, in the NFL during your college career. And I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. I know shortly we're going to be talking a little bit about your son, who actually is playing or about to be playing football in college. You're now listening to Max Lane. He actually is a New England Patriots alumni, and he is dishing all of the deets to us about Scott Zolak, Drew Bledsoe, Bill Parcells, all the funny stuff they used to talk about on the sidelines during games and what it was like going to the Super Bowl. So let's hop on over. I want to talk a little bit about some of your fun facts. That way we can kind of like wrap up the football stuff a little bit, even though I love everything you are talking about. I know currently you are into flipping houses and you like to play the trombone and piano. So like, what the heck is that all about? You go from playing pro football to flipping houses and trombone and piano. Like, how does that come into play here?
Well, flipping houses, I live up in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and I live in like a 2-family, and I bought the other side to fix it up and flip it. And so this is kind of my first go around at it. Enjoying doing it. I have a good partner, good business partner doing it, and he's the contractor, so he's, you know, hiring a lot of subs. But I'm living basically in an active construction zone. My place is so dusty now because the dust just comes through the walls. It's something that I might want to continue doing, just kind of like on the side. So, you know, learning a lot about their trades, it's really interesting, and it's a fun project to be a part of. Oh, the trombone.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what about the trombone and the piano?
Piano lessons back in the 3rd grade, and it was something that my mom made me do, and that is probably one of my one of my few regrets in life, is that I did not stick with playing, with taking my piano lessons. I wish I would have continued taking piano lessons to where I could get to a point of being really proficient. Now, I mean, I can read music, I can play Christmas carols on the piano, but that's about it. You know, the trombone, I played trombone in junior high and high school for the high school band. So that was what that was all about. My brother played trombone, so I got kind of past the trombone in my family. I mean, all my my siblings, we all were in music and in the band at some point during our childhood, you know, whether it was in the band or in the choir or whatever. My parents did a really good job at making sure we were well-rounded.
So very well-rounded. So flipping houses, playing football, trombone, piano. And then what the heck is the deal with you being an NFL uniform inspector? I've never even heard of this before in my life. And I need to know what it is and what it entails.
There are so many jobs in there. Like when you put on an NFL football game, and I probably didn't learn this until I became a uniform inspector. There are so many different people that are part of the production of an NFL football game. It is ridiculous. And one of these jobs that happens is a uniform inspector. Now, they've had this program in for over 30 years, and they use all alumni in these positions. Now, up until about 5 years ago, there was a uniform inspector, one uniform inspector at every home stadium in the league. New England had this guy named Jim Bowman. He played for the Patriots back in the late 80s. And I remember seeing him whenever I was a current player. I remember seeing him in our locker room, and I really didn't know. They said something about he's a uniform guy, but I had really no idea what that meant, and didn't really look into it that much. But I just would always see him. And then when I became an alumni myself, and we have an alumni group that we have quarterly alumni meetings. We raise money for youth and high school football that I'm a part of. After a meeting or something, I was talking with him and kind of getting to know him a little bit. And I was like, man, I used to see you in our locker room all the time. Like, what do you actually do? And he was like, well, you know, I'm a uniform inspector. I make sure guys are wearing their uniform the right way. And I'm like what? He goes, well, you know, I make sure guys are, you know, tucking their jerseys in, pulling their socks up. Their pants are supposed to be below the knee. They wear the right brand of shoes. And I said, where do you go for that? And, you know, at that point in old Foxborough Stadium, there wasn't really a lot of places for him to roam. So he was kind of always hanging out in the locker room. But he says, no, I go anywhere I want. I said, a lot of times during the game, I'm just following the down markers. And, he goes, I can go in the locker room, I go wherever, you know, and I was like, they pay you for that? And he's like, yeah, pretty good too. And I was like, and then he starts complaining about, you know, having to like deal with going to the games and dealing with the traffic and all that stuff. And I just told him at that point, I said, listen, man, anytime you want to get rid of that gig, I'm your guy. And then that became a running 10-year joke of me. Every year I'd be like, hey, Bowman, you ready? You know, give me that job. And he'd be like, oh, you know, the checks are still cashing. So until about 5 years ago, and then the league emailed him and said, we want 2 guys at every stadium. And so they asked him for some names of some other alumni. And he said, you know, he's like, he goes, I'm just going to give him your name and we're going to go from there. And sure enough, so up until this year, him and I did it together. And he would do the home team and I would do the away team. And so, you know, it's the best. I tell people it is the best part-time job ever.
That actually sounds like a really interesting, I guess you would call it part-time side job, and you still get to be involved with the NFL. Yeah. And I would have never even known about that unless you said that you were involved with NFL uniform inspecting. So I think that's super cool. It's really great that you are still actively involved in the football world, whether you're inspecting uniforms or calling into your friends' radio shows when they do sports gigs or doing stuff with Nesson here and there. Let's talk a little bit about charity. So you guys that are now listening know that the Boss Babes are all about charity, giving back, and how our sports entertainers give back to their communities, whether it be their local ones where they grew up or the ones that they played for. So for you, I want to talk all about Greg Hill, a little bit about skating with the Bruins alumni team, and some other ways that you give back. I know that you're involved with football camps and different types of fundraisers and whatnot.
We're playing with Mr. Kraft. Whenever he came to the team, one of his big things was giving back to the community. I think they really started, one of the things that he started as an owner with that team back my rookie year was he put into guys' contracts, into our contracts, that we had to do 10 appearances a year, unpaid appearances. And I think there were guys that probably didn't get all 10, but it was just, there was that emphasis on really getting back into the community and helping out. And I think as a young player forced to do that, you kind of learned, you didn't really know why you were doing it at the beginning, because you were new, you were a rookie to everything. And but then after you got going to a couple of appearances, and you realize that, wow, the impact that you have as a pro football player and what it means to the fans and the people that see you, you realize that making these appearances really had an effect in a lot of people's lives in different ways. That requirement that was made early in my career really made me into someone that really enjoys doing that. And a lot of times, I think the whole thing is that you end up really getting more from it than what you actually give to it. And I think that's the important takeaway from doing things, from giving back to the community, is that you end up really getting more from it in the long run. One of my good friends is this guy Greg Hill. He's got the Hillman Morning Show now. It's on WEEI. Back then it was on WAAF. And I would call into the show sometimes and just ask him what was going on. And this one morning I was calling, they were promoting this charity hockey game up in Lowell at the Songus Arena. And it was, I think it was to benefit, like the Worcester firefighters, because back in 99, they had that really bad fire in Worcester. And he was always a big supporter of those families and everything. And his radio partner on there was this guy, Lyndon Byers, who used to play for the Bruins. And LB goes, "Hey, Maxie, you ought to play with us." And I said, and I was just joking around. I said, "Yeah, I can play. And then Greg goes, "Well, Max, I happen to know that you have never put on skates in your life," which was true. And I said, "Yeah, but I'm an athlete. I mean, I can do, that's no big deal." And he goes, and they're like, "Well, so are you committing?" They locked me down right there. And they said, "So are you committing to playing in this game?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you give me some skates, let me go out, I'll learn how to do it before." I think it was like a couple of weeks away.
There was no turning back after that day. There was no turning back, Max. You had to do it.
Yeah. So I went out and played in that game, and I could barely. I think I skated. I actually ended up skating twice before I went to that game. Went and played in this game, and then Greg, from seeing me play in this game, and it was, it ended up making a lot of people laugh, is what it was. But it was just funny being out on the ice with all these NHL guys, and here I am, I've got no business being out there, but. I don't mind. I never really took myself that seriously. So, I looked at it as kind of fun being out there with such great athletes in a sport that I really had, not a lot of exposure to growing up out in Missouri. So, being able to go there, I got better at skating, but I was still horrible. Offsides and all those different rules that applied to hockey players, they didn't apply to me in those games because the referees knew that I didn't know what the heck I was doing. It was in the first period, and I can't skate backwards. I can't cross over. But if I can get a little bit of momentum going, I can go a little fast, but not very much. Not enough. I can't keep up with the puck. That's what I'm trying to say, Brittany.
Hey, but I give you credit for at least putting on the skates, raising some money, skating with some great hockey players. You put in the effort, and that's all that counts, Max. That's all that counts.
I go up to Shanahan at halftime, and I just said, I said, hey, man, I was like, the rules don't apply to me. I said, so you do what you got to do and don't worry about where I'm at on the ice. And so from that, when we went back out for the second period, he was fine with that. But it was just a funny experience for sure.
I think that's amazing that you, again, are involved with the Bruins alumni and have skated alongside. It sounds like talented athletes, and being with people that have never put on skates before, like yourself, and skating alongside other professional ice hockey players must have been, I can't even imagine what it's like seeing like a 6'4" football player on skates that has never put skates on before. I can't even imagine what that happened to look like. Were you falling a lot?
Yeah, I'm sure it looked pretty funny.
And I wanted to ask you, going alongside the whole charity theme and giving back to the community, I know that you have traveled to Russia a number of times, helping develop the sport in Russia. So let's talk a little bit about that. And then I want to discuss your kids and what they're up to in college, and then we'll sort of wrap up the show. But I want to hear a little bit about you going over to Russia for the last couple years. I know this year you didn't, I believe, due to COVID, but what is it like getting back to Russia?
I've only been there once. It was it happened a couple of years ago. One of our Patriots alumni guys that played back in I think he played back in the late 80s, early 90s. His name was Ilya Droshchuk, obviously a Russian name. He didn't grow up in Russia, but his parents did. His parents came over, kind of fled Russia during the communist times, and he grew up in New Hampshire, went to UNH, and then ended up playing for New England. But anyway, he's the only former NFL alumni, I think, that's fluent in Russian. And so he had some experience doing some of the Super Bowl broadcasts for the Russian broadcast team. And from his experiences of doing within the past 10 years, and his experiences of doing those Super Bowl broadcasts for Russia, he got to know some of the people, some of the guys from Russia. And a couple of these guys had started having this Super Bowl party in Moscow, probably, I think, back in 2008, because we went in the 2018 season when New England played the Rams in the Super Bowl 2 years ago or whenever. That was the Super Bowl that we went over for. But these guys have been having a Super Bowl party for 10 years. And it just started with a couple of their buddies, and they grew it to a point. And their dream of having this Super Bowl party in Moscow was at some point they wanted to be able to turn it into an event where they could raise money and have sponsors and be able to have a budget big enough to bring over American football players to be at their Super Bowl party. And it took them 10 years to do it, but they finally did it, and they blew it out. It was promoted as the largest Super Bowl party in Russia. And it was held at this Moscow Media Dome in Moscow, obviously. And it was in this Moscow Media Dome. It's the world's largest 360-degree video screen, huge, and probably had 3,000 or 4,000 people in here at this party. And the guys that went were me, Ilya, of course, Steve Nelson, who was a Patriots Hall of Famer from the 70s and 80s, and then Patriots Hall of Fame linebacker. And so the four of us were the American football players that went over there, and you were allowed to bring a guest because Ilya kind of set up the whole trip, because he said, if you want these guys to come over here, I don't want them to just come over for the weekend, fly 13, 14 hours just to come for a weekend for the party. I want them to come over for 8 or 9 days. I want them to go to St. Petersburg for the first half of the week and then down to Moscow for Super Bowl weekend. And he goes, I want them to be able to bring somebody. So this is what you have to budget for. So he was able to kind of really build a once-in-a-lifetime trip for all of us. I got to bring my daughter with me. Be a lifelong memory for us. And then Ilya kind of was basically our tour guide around St. Petersburg and around Moscow, because he could speak Russian, fluently and everything. And I mean, we have one heck of a week. It was such a big deal for American football players had never been to Russia, evidently, officially like this. We go there, and the thing that I heard was that the they have a couple. They have some men's professional leagues over there. I don't know how much they get. It's just like, I don't know if it's just like if it's professional or if it's just those guys play because they love football. But the thing is that the men did not believe that there was actually. They told the teams, "Hey, American football players are coming over. Sign up for this football clinic." And the men were like, "Nah, they're lying. There's no American football players coming over here." So none of them signed up. All women signed up. So the clinics ended up, they had like 60 women at one in St. Petersburg and another 60 in Moscow. And it was all women. And I mean, they got after it. I mean, they were cracking just as hard as what guys would. And that was definitely an interesting experience, to go over there. And then ever since then, since 2000, the #1 team has been in the NFL has been New England. So there's a lot of Patriots fans over in Russia. Mostly it was a lot of Patriots fans. So that's what brought us all over there.
I think that's amazing that you got to be in basically a football ambassador over in Russia. I think it's super incredible that there are so many New England Patriots fans overseas in Russia. And I think it's amazing that your daughter got to be a part of that experience as well. So let's discuss your kids for a few minutes. So I understand your daughter right now, Alexis, is attending Bridgewater State, and also your son is a freshman at Holy Cross. I heard he's like 6'4", may or may not be playing football. Can you drop some hints? Is he going to be playing football there? What's going on with your kids right now?
My daughter is a senior at Bridgewater State. She's a psychology, social work major. She's applying to grad school. She's hoping to go to grad school down at Bridgewater State. So she works at a group home in Beverly, Mass. that she converted from being an internship in the summer to being a job for the fall. So she's doing really well at that and getting a lot of good experience. So she's kind of got her plan going. She's doing great. My son is a freshman at Holy Cross. Last year, he did a PG year at Phillips Andover. They're going to attempt to have a spring football season, if COVID doesn't interfere any more than what it already has. Kind of a shortened season. Yeah, he's 6'4", 230 right now. He's a tight end. So hoping that he gets off to a good start in his college career.
Well, best of luck to both of your kids. And I have fully enjoyed speaking with you. You guys are now listening to Max Lane. Again, New England Patriots alumni. You guys have heard everything in this 2-part episode where Max grew up, again, in a small town in Missouri, from his family life, everything from playing in the U.S. Naval Academy, playing with the New England Patriots, playing under Coach Bill Parcells, playing with Drew Bledsoe. Literally, this episode has been jam-packed. Obviously, you guys just heard him talk about how he gives back to the community in a number of ways, whether it be on the ice, going to Russia, helping develop the sport of football clinics, and obviously being both a father and a coach, it seems like nowadays. Game day eats. Let's discuss some game day eats, Max. What do you enjoy eating on your free time? I know you make a mean buffalo chicken dip. You were telling me that a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I do. I don't mind giving out my recipe if you want it. I love anything buffalo flavor. I mean, I'll eat it. I don't care what it is. I mean, a lot of times I'll eat the lettuce garnish and just dip it in buffalo sauce and throw it right down. I love buffalo. Got a recipe. I was at somebody's football party like a couple of years ago, and I loved the dip, and they gave me the recipe, so I started making it myself. And I use a rotisserie chicken. I mean, who doesn't like rotisserie chicken? Debone that thing, and you throw it in the crock pot, and then you also get your cream cheese. You get mozzarella cheese. That's all the normal stuff. Ranch dressing. I don't like blue cheese, so I do not put blue cheese in it. I cannot stand blue cheese. Frank's buffalo wing sauce, and just put that in, mix that all up in there, and in about 2.5 hours in the crock pot on high, you've got yourself some mean buffalo chicken dip.
Sounds delicious. I might have to try that recipe. I myself do actually like blue cheese, but I actually put it on the side. I don't put it in the recipe. I put it on the side.
Yeah, there you go.
But I do like that you add the other different types of cheese in it. Big Buffalo, chicken dip person, and Positive Pop. You guys know here on the Boss Babes Lifestyle Sports Podcast how players give back on and off the field, of course. But Positive Pop, Max, what is your Positive Pop?
Positive Pop. You explained this to me before. I guess I'd have to say, like, you know, I like music. Obviously, I have a music background with, you know, playing trombone and piano and all that stuff. So, you know, I'm a big old school rap guy, you know, old school hip hop. And so if you put anything with Snoop Dogg on, that gets me in a good mood.
You have a favorite song by Snoop Dogg that you like, and can you sing some of that song? Snoop Dogg, Dogg.
No, I don't know. See, I mean, I am a karaoke guy, but
I can't sing it all to save my life, but here we are.
Yeah, no, Snoop Dogg. I don't do Snoop Dogg on karaoke. I got a different karaoke song.
Favorite Snoop Dogg song? You don't have to sing it.
No, I mean, you know, who doesn't love gin and juice, man? I mean, you know, that's a legit
classic.
But it's pretty much anything that he sings. You know, it's anything that he sings is you know, is just, you know, he's got a unique voice, a unique rhythm in his voice, and
he has a unique look to him too. The Snoop Dogg vibe.
The whole thing.
Your Positive Pop is good music from Snoop Dogg. I love that. Yeah. And let's wrap up the show. You absolutely crushed it on this podcast. Where can people follow you on social media if you do have social media? I don't know if you have a website, or where can people keep up with what you are up to currently?
I'd have to. I mean, I'm on Facebook. mlane68 at mlane68. I think that's what it is. That's my number. My jersey number was 68. I am on Instagram, but I am not very savvy with Instagram. I'm just kind of, I don't know, that platform is just, there's just too much stuff going on for me in that right now. Yeah.
Well, if you guys want to keep up with Max, he does have a personal Facebook, and he also has a Twitter, as he just mentioned. Please obviously continue to follow myself, Brittany Baldi, on all social media platforms. Of course, continue listening to the Boss Babes podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. And please continue to follow the Boss Babes on all social media platforms as well. You guys rock. Thank you so much for tuning in, and happy Super Bowl to everybody. Thank you so much, Max.
All right. Thank you, Brittany.